used to live in the city, surrounded by noise, chaos, and people. But after a traumatic experience, everything changed. I developed phonophobia, the fear of noise. A simple honking horn or a slamming door sent waves of panic through me. I couldn't stand it any longer. I had to get away. So, I packed my things and moved to a cabin in the Pacific Northwest, somewhere deep in Oregon, far away from everything. It was perfect, quiet, isolated, and surrounded by nature. It was everything I needed. I thought I'd found peace. The cabin was small, but cozy. The air smelled of pine and old books, like something you'd find at an old bed and breakfast. I spent my days in blissful solitude. The only sounds were birds and the occasional wind brushing through the trees. A week later, there was a knock at the door. At first, I thought it was just the wind. But no, it came again. Knock, knock. Reluctantly, I opened it. Standing there was an older woman. She had long gray hair, piercing blue eyes, and she was holding a basket of preserves. She introduced herself as Michelle. She lived about 10 minutes down the trail, though it felt much farther in the dense woods. Her greeting was strange. She shoved the basket in my face, practically forcing it on me. I took it, though I felt an unease bubbling inside. She didn't seem like the friendly neighbor type. Her eyes studied me with an intensity that made me feel like she could see right through me. Before I could say anything, she gave me a cryptic warning. Always keep your lanterns full, your windows shut tight, and your wits sharper than your axe. I didn't know how to respond. It wasn't advice. It felt more like a rule, like something she had memorized. I closed the door and stood there in silence, the words echoing in my head. I didn't know what to make of it. But, I thought, maybe it was just her odd way of greeting neighbors. That night, a thunderstorm hit. I didn't mind. Being alone in the storm was comforting. But then a loud knock at the door broke the silence. It wasn't a normal knock. It was a frantic, desperate pounding. I opened the door to find Michelle standing there again, drenched from the rain. She said she saw someone near my woodpile. She looked nervous, her eyes darting back toward the trees as if expecting someone to jump out at any moment. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. But the woods were silent. Nothing. I turned back to her, confused, and she told me to be careful before walking off into the storm without a second glance. I watched her disappear into the storm, and something didn't sit right with me. How could she have seen someone near my woodpile if her cabin was 10 minutes away? She must have been on my property already. Why was she snooping around in the middle of a thunderstorm? I locked up the cabin and sat in my room, listening to the storm outside. A few hours passed without incident, and I started to relax. But then I heard something just outside my window, a branch snapping. I crept to the window, half hoping I wouldn't see anything. But there she was, Michelle, standing at the edge of the woods. Her hair was wild, disheveled, and she was staring at my cabin. I ducked down before she saw me, but she was still there watching. I waited, heart racing, until finally I peeked again. She was gone. But that was it. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. My mind was racing. What was going on? Was she really just watching over me, or was she hiding something more sinister? The next day, I decided to check on her cabin. I drove over, and when I got there, it was abandoned. No lights, no signs of life. The police confirmed it. No one had lived there in decades. That's when I realized that everything Michelle had said, everything that had happened, didn't make sense. And now, I can't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. Was she trying to protect me? Or was she something else entirely? My name's Luke. My girlfriend Catherine and I have been together for 3 years. We met at Stanford, a school I've dreamed of attending since I was young. But we're both from Ohio, far from California. I think that's why we hit it off so well. We shared the same Midwestern background, the same sense of calm in the midst of the chaos. One of our traditions was splitting Christmas between our families. This year, we decided to spend Christmas Eve with my family, then drive to hers on Christmas Day. The drive was always the best part. The roads were quiet, the world seemed asleep, and we had it all to ourselves. We left my family's house at midnight, the snow falling lightly outside. The roads were empty, the world silent. The only sound was the music blasting from the car speakers. Juice WRLD. His music had become a shared obsession between us, a connection that felt unique every time we sang together. We were in the middle of the drive when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I ignored it, annoyed at the late-night interruption. It was probably a scam. But then it rang again. Another unknown number. I ignored it again, but Catherine glanced at me with a raised eyebrow. It seemed odd, but I shrugged it off. The calls didn't stop. A third time, my phone rang and I finally snapped. I grabbed the phone, ready to yell at whoever was bothering us. I swiped the screen aggressively and answered, expecting to hear the usual scam script. But there was only silence on the other end. Then faint static filled the line. My heart skipped a beat and I felt my body tense. Suddenly, a voice broke through the static. It was deep and chilling. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone to know my name. I was about to speak, to ask who this was, but the voice continued. It started reciting personal details about my life, my full name, my address, where I grew up, things I'd never shared with anyone who wasn't close to me. I felt my pulse quicken, panic rising in my chest. How did he know all this? I glanced at Catherine. She was staring at me, her face as pale as I felt. I was paralyzed, but I finally managed to force words out of my mouth. I asked him what he wanted. I tried to keep my voice steady, but the fear was obvious in my tone. The voice on the other end paused. Then, in a slow, deliberate tone, he said something that made my blood run cold. "I'm not here for you. I'm here for Catherine." I looked at Catherine, and her eyes were wide with terror. It was like time stopped for a second. I blurted out that I didn't know any Catherine, that he had the wrong number. But the man just chuckled, a low, cruel sound. Then he said, "She's sitting right next to you." At that moment, everything inside me screamed to pull over, to get off the road. I didn't know what was happening, but I couldn't keep driving like this. My hands were shaking as I pulled the car over to the side of the road. Before I could even say anything to Catherine, she reached into my lap and hung up the phone. I was stunned. I screamed at her, demanding to know why she hung up on someone who was making threats about us. She didn't answer right away. Catherine was trembling. She didn't look at me, just stared out the window, her eyes filled with fear. I tried calling the number back, over and over, but each time it didn't go through. I had no idea what was happening, but I knew this wasn't just some prank. The rest of the drive was in total silence. I could feel the weight of the fear between us. Catherine was scared, and so was I. Neither of us spoke for what felt like forever. About 10 minutes later, I glanced at Catherine. Her eyes were filled with tears. She said she didn't feel safe. I didn't know how to reassure her. Hell, I didn't feel safe either. The whole situation felt wrong, and something deep inside told me that this wasn't over. We finally pulled into Catherine's driveway, but I still felt no relief. It wasn't over. I kept expecting that number to call back, but it never did. That feeling in my gut, it hasn't gone away. It's been almost a month since the phone call, but I still can't shake the fear. The number hasn't called back, but every time my phone rings now, I brace myself. I keep thinking that sooner or later, he's going to call again. I don't know who that man was, or what he wanted, but something about it tells me this wasn't a coincidence. I can't stop thinking about how he knew so much about us. How he knew Catherine was sitting right next to me, and that's the part that haunts me the most. A few months ago, I was driving for Lyft, something I've been doing for a few years now. I prefer late-night shifts, less traffic, and the tips are better. But there's a price to pay. Sometimes the ride brings you something you'll never forget. This is one of those nights. That night, the streets felt different. Too quiet. I got a request from a convenience store nearby. But when I arrived, the store was closed. No lights, no cars. Yet there he was, a man pacing outside, wearing a dirty hoodie with a hole in the sleeve. His movements were jerky, frantic. I should have canceled the ride. My finger hovered over the button, but I didn't press it. Instead, I unlocked the doors. He slid into the back seat without a word. As I drove, I felt his eyes on me. Not the casual glance of a bored passenger. No, he stared directly at me through the rearview mirror. No blinking, no turning away. I turned on the radio to break the silence, but the second the music started, he snapped at me to turn it off. His voice was deep, raspy. Something about it made my skin crawl. Then, he spoke. "Ever pick up someone you shouldn't have?" I forced a nervous chuckle, but he didn't laugh. Instead, he muttered about his past as an Uber driver, how punks had stolen from him, and how funny it was that people trusted strangers. I should have been more careful. His story didn't add up. His eyes never left me. I kept my focus on the road, my heart racing in my chest, the tension building with every second. The silence was suffocating. He kept talking about random things that didn't make sense. One moment, he was apologizing to someone I couldn't see, and the next, he was rambling about how he was a bad person, muttering, "I didn't mean it," like he was talking to himself. We were close to his stop, but then he snapped. "You missed the turn." But the GPS was clear. We hadn't. My hands trembled as I slammed on the brakes, the car jerking to a stop as I stared at the empty road ahead. He demanded I pull over. I did. My heart was in my throat. I shifted into park, praying this nightmare would end. Then, just as I thought it couldn't get worse, headlights appeared behind us. A police car. The man slouched down in the seat, trying to hide. I held my breath, waiting for the officer to notice something was wrong. The police car passed without stopping. The man straightened up, looked at me with a chilling smirk, and muttered, "You got lucky." Without another word, he opened the door and disappeared into the night. Shaken, I ended my shift early. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just come face to face with something dangerous. It wasn't until weeks later that I found out that same night, a convenience store had been robbed. 2 blocks from where I picked up that man. That night, I came terrifyingly close to becoming a victim of something much darker, and I'll never forget the eerie feeling that man left behind.